What do you do when you discover your dying mother-in-law spent her last 3 years helping your husband hide his pregnant mistress? Do you stay quiet at her funeral? Do you let them mourn in peace? Or do you walk up to that podium and tell everyone exactly who they're really burying?
I'm Mallory Grace Bennett.
I'm 34 years old, and this is my story. 3 days ago, I stood at the back of St. Catherine's Church in Charleston, South Carolina, watching 600 people file in to mourn a woman they thought was a saint. The organ played softly. The air smelled of lilies and expensive perfume. Everyone wore black. Everyone looked appropriately sad. And I stood there in my simple black dress, clutching my purse so tightly my knuckles turned white, knowing that in exactly 45 minutes, I was going to destroy every single memory these people had of Eleanor Patricia Ashford, my mother-in-law, the woman who raised the man I married, the woman who spent her final 3 years on this earth orchestrating the most elaborate betrayal I've ever witnessed. But before I tell you what I did at that funeral, before I tell you about the moment I walked up to that microphone and spoke words that made grown men gasp and society women faint, I need to take you back. I need you to understand how I got there. I need you to understand who I was before all of this happened, and who I became after I discovered the truth. Before we continue, if you're finding this story compelling, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the like button, leave a comment letting me know which city you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on. Your support means everything, and helps me bring you more stories like this one. Thank you so much. Now let me take you back to where it all began. 7 years ago, I met Marcus Ashford at a hospital fundraiser in downtown Charleston. I was 27, working as a senior marketing consultant for a mid-sized tech firm. I'd been invited to the event by my boss, who knew I was good at networking and even better at landing new clients. The ballroom at the Harbor View Hotel was filled with Charleston's elite. Doctors, lawyers, old money families whose names were carved into buildings across the historic district. I was standing near the bar, nursing a glass of white wine, and trying to look interested in a conversation about yacht maintenance, when I saw him. Marcus was tall, about 6'2", with dark hair that was just starting to silver at the temples. He had the kind of face that belonged in a cologne advertisement. Strong jaw, clear blue eyes, and a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He was wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, and he moved through the crowd with the easy confidence of someone who'd grown up attending events like this. He approached me with 2 glasses of champagne. "You look like you could use an upgrade from whatever's in that glass," he said, his voice smooth and warm. I laughed. That obvious? Let's just say I recognized the expression of someone who's being held hostage by a conversation about marine vessels. We talked for 3 hours that night. He told me he was a cardiologist at Roper Hospital, that he'd gone to medical school at Duke, that he'd grown up in Charleston in one of those massive historic homes on South Battery Street. I told him about my work, about growing up in a small town in upstate New York, about moving to Charleston 5 years earlier, because I'd fallen in love with the city during a college spring break trip. He was charming. He was attentive. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. When he asked for my number at the end of the night, I gave it to him without hesitation. Our first date was at Hank's seafood restaurant. He picked me up in a sleek black Mercedes, held doors open, and made me laugh until my sides hurt. Our second date was a sunset sail in Charleston Harbor. Our third date was a quiet dinner at his place, where he cooked pasta from scratch, and we talked until 2 in the morning about everything from childhood dreams to current fears. 3 months later, he took me to meet his mother. Eleanor Ashford lived in the family estate on South Battery, a massive antebellum mansion with white columns, a wraparound porch, and gardens that looked like something from a Southern Living magazine. The house had been in the Ashford family for 5 generations. Eleanor's late husband, Marcus's father, had been a prominent surgeon who died of a heart attack when Marcus was in medical school. Eleanor was 63 then, though she looked at least 10 years younger. She was tall and slender, with perfectly styled silver hair and the kind of elegant bearing that came from generations of good breeding. She wore pearl earrings and a tasteful blue dress. Her smile was warm but measured, and her handshake was firm. "Mallory, dear," she said when Marcus introduced us. "Marcus has told me so much about you. Please come in." The interior of the house was exactly what you'd expect. Antique furniture, oil paintings of Ashford ancestors, Persian rugs, and fresh flowers in crystal vases. We had tea in the formal living room, sitting on furniture that was probably worth more than my annual salary. Eleanor asked about my family, my education, my career. She was polite, gracious even. But I could feel her evaluating me, measuring me against some invisible standard. I learned later that this was just Eleanor's way. She evaluated everyone. It wasn't personal. It was simply how she navigated the world. At the end of that first visit, as Marcus and I were leaving, Eleanor took my hand. "You seem like a lovely young woman, Mallory," she said. "I do hope we'll see more of you." Marcus squeezed my other hand and grinned. On the drive back to my apartment, he was practically glowing. "She liked you," he said. "Trust me, if she didn't, you'd know. Mother has no poker face when it comes to people she disapproves of." 6 months later, Marcus proposed. He did it at White Point Garden, right at sunset, with the harbor in the background and dolphins jumping in the distance. The ring was a flawless 2-carat diamond set in platinum, elegant and timeless, just like Eleanor herself had helped him pick it out, he told me later. I said yes without hesitation. We were married 8 months after that, in a ceremony at St. Catherine's Church, the same church where I would later stand at Eleanor's funeral. It was a large wedding, nearly 400 guests, most of them people I'd never met. Ashford family friends, Marcus's colleagues from the hospital, Charleston society figures who'd known Eleanor for decades. Eleanor planned most of it. I'd wanted something smaller, more intimate, but she gently insisted that an Ashford wedding required a certain level of grandeur. And honestly, I didn't fight it. I was marrying into one of Charleston's oldest families. I understood there were expectations. The wedding was beautiful. The reception was held at the Charleston Place Hotel. We danced, we toasted, we smiled for what felt like 1,000 photographs. Eleanor gave a speech about how proud she was of her son, how delighted she was to welcome me into the family, how she knew Marcus and I would build a wonderful life together. I believed every word. We honeymooned in Tuscany for 2 weeks. Rolling hills, vineyard tours, ancient villages, and pasta that made me never want to eat anywhere else. Marcus was attentive and romantic. We talked about our future. He wanted children, maybe 2 or 3. I did too. He wanted to eventually take over as head of cardiology at Roper. I wanted to maybe start my own marketing consultancy someday. Everything was perfect. When we returned to Charleston, we moved into a beautiful historic townhouse on Trad Street that Eleanor had gifted us as a wedding present. It was a 3-story brick building with original hardwood floors, working fireplaces, and a private courtyard garden. The deed was in both our names. Eleanor insisted on that. "Your family now, Mallory," she'd said when she handed us the keys. "What's mine is yours." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Marcus worked long hours at the hospital, often pulling shifts in the cardiac ICU. I continued my work at the marketing firm and eventually did start my own consultancy, taking on clients across the Southeast. We had dinner parties with friends, attended fundraisers and gallery openings, spent Sundays having brunch with Eleanor at the estate. Eleanor became more than just my mother-in-law. She became my mentor, my friend, someone I genuinely enjoyed spending time with. She taught me about Charleston society, about the unspoken rules and expectations. She introduced me to her social circle, vouched for me at the prestigious Charleston Garden Club, helped me navigate the sometimes treacherous waters of old Southern money. We had tea together every Thursday afternoon. Sometimes at her house, sometimes at mine, occasionally at one of the elegant tea rooms downtown. We'd talk about everything. My work, her charity projects, Marcus's career, plans for holidays, dreams for the future. "You've been such a gift to this family, Mallory," she told me once, about 2 years into my marriage. We were sitting in her sunroom, surrounded by orchids she cultivated herself. "Marcus is happier than I've ever seen him. You've given him something I never could, a true partnership, a real marriage based on mutual respect and love." I squeezed her hand. "You raised an incredible man, Eleanor." She smiled, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite read. Something that flickered for just a moment before disappearing behind her usual warm expression. But I didn't think anything of it then. Why would I? 3 years into our marriage, Marcus and I started seriously trying for a baby. We talked about it, planned for it, and we were both ready. I went off birth control. We tracked my cycle. We were careful about timing. Months passed. Nothing happened. These things take time, Marcus assured me. We're both healthy. It'll happen when it happens. 6 months turned into a year. Still nothing. Eleanor was supportive, or at least I thought she was. Don't stress yourself, darling, she'd say during our Thursday teas. Stress is terrible for fertility. Just relax and let nature take its course. Marcus finally suggested we see a fertility specialist. We went together to an appointment with Dr. Rachel Kim, one of the best reproductive endocrinologists in Charleston. We did tests. Blood work, ultrasounds, semen analysis, everything. The results came back normal. Both of us were perfectly healthy. There was no medical reason we shouldn't be able to conceive. Sometimes it just takes longer for some couples, Dr. Kim explained. Unexplained infertility is more common than people think. We can try some interventions if you'd like, or you can keep trying naturally for another 6 months and see what happens. We decided to keep trying naturally. But something shifted in Marcus around that time. He became distant. He worked even longer hours. He'd come home exhausted, barely able to hold a conversation. He stopped initiating sex, and when we did try, it felt mechanical, obligatory. I'm just stressed at work, he'd say when I asked if something was wrong. We're understaffed in the ICU. I'm pulling doubles and triples.
It's not you, Mal.
I promise. I believed him. Or, I wanted to believe him. Eleanor noticed too. Marcus seems tired lately, she mentioned one Thursday afternoon. We were at her house, sitting in the formal dining room with china cups and tiny cucumber sandwiches between us. It's the hospital, I said. He's been working crazy hours. She nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. He's always been such a dedicated physician. Sometimes too dedicated. He forgets to take care of himself. I keep telling him to slow down, I said. But you know Marcus. When he commits to something, he gives it everything. Yes, Eleanor said quietly. He's very committed. Always has been. There was something in her tone that made me look at her more carefully. But when I met her eyes, she was smiling, and I decided I'd imagined it. For years into our marriage, things got worse. Marcus started traveling more. Medical conferences, he said. Continuing education requirements. Consultations with specialists at other hospitals. He'd be gone for 3 or 4 days at a time, usually once or twice a month. I'd text him during these trips. He'd respond, but slowly. Hours would pass between messages. When I'd call, he'd often let it go to voicemail, texting back later that he'd been in a session or meeting with colleagues. Everything okay with you and Marcus? My best friend Simone asked one night. We were having dinner at slightly north of Broad, and I'd been particularly quiet. Yeah, I said automatically. Why? I don't know. You just seem, I don't know, sad lately. Was I sad? Maybe. Or maybe I was just tired. Tired of trying to get pregnant. Tired of feeling like I was losing my husband to his career. Tired of pretending everything was fine when it increasingly felt like it wasn't. We're fine, I told Simone. Just going through a rough patch. Every marriage has them, right? She didn't look convinced, but she let it drop. Eleanor, on the other hand, seemed more attentive than ever. She started calling more often, stopping by the house with little gifts, inviting me to more events. When Marcus was traveling, she'd insist I come have dinner with her at the estate. No reason for you to be alone, she'd say. We can keep each other company. I appreciated it. Truly I did. Eleanor had become one of my closest friends in Charleston. When Marcus was distant and distracted, Eleanor was present and engaged. She listened to me talk about my work challenges. She gave me advice about handling difficult clients. She made me feel valued and important. Looking back now, I can see what she was doing. She was gathering intelligence. She was keeping me close, keeping tabs on what I knew, what I suspected, what I might discover. She was managing me the same way she managed every aspect of her perfectly curated life. But I didn't see it then. I was too grateful for her attention, too relieved to have someone who seemed to actually care about my well-being. It was around this time, about 4.5 years into my marriage, that I noticed Marcus had become obsessive about his phone. He'd take it with him everywhere. To the bathroom, to the kitchen when he got a glass of water, even to bed where he'd sleep with it face down on his nightstand. If it buzzed while we were together, he'd grab it immediately, glance at the screen, and either ignore it or step into another room to respond. "Who keeps texting you?" I asked one evening. We were having dinner at home, one of the rare nights he wasn't working late. "Just the hospital," he said, not looking up from his phone. "We've got a critical patient in the ICU." "They text you about critical patients?" "The attending does. He likes to keep me in the loop." It sounded plausible. I didn't push. But the texts kept coming. At dinner, during movies, in the middle of the night. Always, he'd check them immediately. Always, he'd be vague about who it was. Then there were the hang-ups. The phone would ring, Marcus would glance at the caller ID, and he'd silence it without answering. Over and over again. "Why don't you just answer it?" I asked once. "Spam call," he'd say. Or, "Wrong number." Or, "Robocall." Every time I questioned something, he had an explanation. And every explanation was just reasonable enough that I accepted it. This is what they don't tell you about betrayal. It doesn't usually announce itself with obvious red flags. It creeps in slowly, disguised as reasonable explanations and plausible stories. It hides behind legitimate-sounding excuses and deflections that make you doubt your own instincts. 5 years into our marriage, Eleanor was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor gave her 6 months to a year, maybe 18 months, if she responded well to treatment. I was devastated. Marcus was stoic, the way he always was with medical news. Eleanor herself was remarkably calm. "We all die eventually, darling," she told me when I broke down crying at her house the day after the diagnosis. "At least I know what's coming. I can prepare. I can make sure everything is in order." "You're going to fight this, right?" I asked. "You're going to do the treatment?" "I'll do what I need to do," she said carefully. "But Mallory, I want you to promise me something. Promise me you'll take care of Marcus after I'm gone." He puts on a brave face, but losing his father nearly destroyed him. "Losing me, I worry it might finish the job." "Of course," I said, gripping her hands. "Of course I'll take care of him. We'll take care of each other." She smiled, and there were tears in her eyes. Real tears. I'd never seen Eleanor cry before. "You're a good woman, Mallory. Better than we deserve." I didn't understand what she meant by that. Not then. Eleanor started chemotherapy. She refused to let it slow her down significantly. She still hosted her monthly charity luncheons at the estate, still attended her book club and garden club meetings, still had me over for Thursday tea, though sometimes I'd bring the tea to her if she was having a particularly bad week. And through it all, Marcus became even more absent. He'd visit his mother, of course, but his visits were brief. He'd stay for 20 minutes, check her vitals with a physician's clinical detachment, ask if she needed anything, and then leave, citing work emergencies or patient emergencies or consultations he couldn't miss. "He's avoiding this," Eleanor said to me one afternoon. We were in her bedroom. She'd been too weak to come downstairs that day. "He doesn't know how to process the fact that I'm dying." "He loves you so much," I said. "Maybe that's why it's hard for him to be here. It hurts too much." "Perhaps," she said. But again, there was something in her expression I couldn't quite decipher. Marcus's absences increased. More conferences, more consultations, more late nights at the hospital. I was essentially caring for Eleanor by myself, with the help of a home health aide named Patricia, who came in during the day. I didn't mind. I loved Eleanor. She'd been so good to me. Caring for her felt like the least I could do. But I was lonely. My husband was a ghost who occasionally slept in our bed. My mother-in-law was dying. My friends had their own lives, their own families. I felt untethered, like I was floating through a life that didn't quite feel like mine anymore. It was during one of those lonely evenings, about 8 months into Eleanor's diagnosis, that I first heard the name Jasmine Collier. I was at the estate, helping Eleanor get ready for bed. She'd had a rough day with treatment, and Patricia had already left for the evening. Eleanor was groggy from pain medication, not quite asleep, but not quite conscious either. Her phone was on the nightstand, and it lit up with a text message. I glanced at it reflexively, not meaning to snoop, just checking if it was something urgent that needed immediate attention. The preview on the lock screen read, "Eleanor, I'm here. Coming up now. Is she still downstairs?" The sender was listed simply as J. Before I could process what I'd seen, I heard the front door open downstairs. Footsteps in the foyer. Someone was in the house. "Eleanor," a woman's voice called from the first floor. "Eleanor, it's me." I stepped out of Eleanor's bedroom and looked down the grand staircase. Standing in the foyer, looking up at me with wide eyes, was a young woman I'd never seen before. She was pretty, maybe late 20s, with long dark hair and delicate features. She was wearing jeans and a loose sweater, and she was carrying a small overnight bag. We stared at each other for a long moment. "Who are you?" I finally asked. The woman's face went pale. I'm a friend of Eleanor's. She asked me to come by. At 9:30 at night? I work late. This was the only time I could make it. Something about her story didn't sit right with me, but Eleanor called out from her bedroom before I could press further. "Mallory? Is someone there?" I went back into the bedroom. Eleanor was more alert now, sitting up slightly, her eyes clear. "There's a woman downstairs," I said. "She says she's your friend. Says you asked her to come by." Eleanor's expression remained neutral, but I saw her grip the blanket a little tighter. "Oh yes. That must be Jasmine. She volunteers with one of my charities. She sometimes stops by to drop off paperwork or pick up donation checks. Could you let her in, dear? I forgot she was coming tonight." It was odd. Eleanor never forgot anything, even medicated and exhausted. And what kind of charity volunteer came by at 9:30 at night? But I didn't question it. Not then. I just went downstairs, let Jasmine in, and told her Eleanor was upstairs if she needed to see her. Jasmine thanked me, her voice quiet and nervous, and headed up the stairs with her overnight bag. I left the estate shortly after, driving home through the dark Charleston streets, pushing away the small voice in my head that whispered something wasn't right. That was the first time I saw her. It wouldn't be the last. Over the next few months, I started noticing Jasmine more and more. She was at the estate when I'd arrive for my visits with Eleanor. She was leaving as I was coming in. Eleanor would mention her casually. "Oh, Jasmine helped me organize the storage room," or "Jasmine picked up my prescriptions today." "She's very devoted," I commented once. "That's dedication for a volunteer." "Yes," Eleanor agreed. "She's been invaluable these past few months. I don't know what I'd do without her." I should have asked more questions. I should have pushed harder. I should have demanded to know why this stranger was spending so much time with my dying mother-in-law, why she had a key to the house, why Eleanor seemed so protective of her. But I didn't, because I was exhausted from caring for a dying woman while my husband disappeared into his work. Because I trusted Eleanor completely. Because it never occurred to me that the woman I considered one of my closest friends was lying to me. 3 months before Eleanor died, I found out I was pregnant. I was in shock. After years of trying, after accepting that it might never happen, there it was. 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test I took on a random Tuesday morning because my period was a few days late and I had an extra test under the bathroom sink. I was going to have a baby. I was going to be a mother. I called Marcus immediately. He didn't answer. I texted, "Call me when you can. Important." Not an emergency, but important. He called back 3 hours later, between surgeries. "What's up, Mel?" "I'm pregnant," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. There was a pause. A long pause. "You're sure?" he finally asked. 3 tests. All positive. "I'm sure." Another pause. Wow. "That's great, Mel. That's really great." His tone was flat. Distracted. Like, I just told him I'd bought new towels for the bathroom. "Are you okay?" I asked. Yeah, I'm in the middle of things here. Can we talk about this tonight?" "Of course." "Okay. I'll try to get home at a reasonable hour." "Congratulations, Mal, really. This is great news." He hung up before I could respond. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the positive pregnancy tests lined up on the counter, and I felt utterly alone. But then I thought of Eleanor. Eleanor would be thrilled. After all her gentle encouragement, all her support during our fertility struggles, she'd be so happy to know she'd have a grandchild before she passed. I drove to the estate immediately. Patricia was there, helping Eleanor with her lunch. Eleanor was having a good day, relatively speaking. She was sitting up in the sunroom, her color slightly better than it had been the week before. "Mallory, darling." She greeted me with a warm smile. What a lovely surprise. "I wasn't expecting you until Thursday." "I have news," I said, unable to keep the smile off my face despite my confusion about Marcus's reaction. "Good news." Eleanor set down her soup spoon, her eyes brightening. "Tell me." "I'm pregnant." For just a fraction of a second, Eleanor's smile faltered. Her eyes widened, and something that looked almost like panic flashed across her face. But then it was gone, replaced by joy. She stood up, somewhat unsteadily, and pulled me into a hug.
"Oh, Mallory."
"Oh, my dear girl. That's wonderful. Just wonderful." But her voice sounded strained. Her hug felt too tight, almost desperate. When she pulled back, there were tears streaming down her face. "Are you okay?" I asked, suddenly concerned. "Is this too much excitement? Should you sit back down?" No, I'm fine. I'm just so happy. So happy for you both." She gripped my hands hard. "Have you told Marcus?" "Yes, just now. He was at the hospital, but I called him." "And what did he say?" "He was surprised, I think. In shock, maybe. We've been trying for so long." Eleanor nodded slowly, her eyes searching my face.
"Yes."
"Of course."
"Shock?"
"That makes sense." She sat back down, suddenly looking exhausted. "You're going to be a wonderful mother, Mallory. You'll love that baby, with everything you have." There was something about the way she said it, something about the sadness in her eyes that didn't match the joy that should have been there. But before I could analyze it further, we heard the front door open. "Eleanor," a familiar voice called out. "I brought your prescription refill." It was Jasmine. She appeared in the doorway of the sunroom, pharmacy bag in hand, and froze when she saw me.
"Oh, Mallory. Hi."
"I didn't know you were here. I stopped by with some news," I said, studying her reaction. Jasmine's eyes flicked to Eleanor, then back to me. "News." Eleanor spoke before I could. "Mallory's expecting a baby." The pharmacy bag fell from Jasmine's hands. Pills scattered across the hardwood floor. Her face went completely white. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, and in that moment I saw it. The small but unmistakable swell beneath her loose sweater. Jasmine Collier was pregnant too. "Are you okay?" I asked, moving toward her. "Here, let me help you pick those up."
"No."
Jasmine said sharply, then seemed to catch herself.
"No, imshuri. I'm fine."
"Just clumsy. I'll get these." You should visit with Eleanor." She knelt down quickly, gathering the scattered pills with shaking hands. Eleanor watched her with an expression I'd never seen before. Something protective and guilty and sad all at once. "Jasmine, dear," Eleanor said softly, "why don't you go upstairs and rest for a bit? You look pale." "Upstairs," I repeated. "Does she live here?" There was a beat of silence. "Just temporarily," Eleanor said. "She's between apartments. I have more than enough room, and with her helping me so much, it made sense." It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. But what could I say? It was Eleanor's house. If she wanted to let a volunteer stay with her, that was her choice. Jasmine gathered the last of the pills and practically ran from the room. Eleanor and I sat in uncomfortable silence. "She seems nice," I finally said, because I had to say something. "She is," Eleanor replied. "She's been through a lot. I'm trying to help her get back on her feet." "That's kind of you." "It's the least I can do." Again, that strange tone. That weight behind her words that suggested something I wasn't understanding. I stayed for another hour, but the joy of sharing my pregnancy news had been replaced by a creeping sense of unease I couldn't quite name. As I was leaving, I passed by a half-open door upstairs. Jasmine's room, presumably. Through the crack, I could see her sitting on the edge of the bed, crying, one hand on her stomach. And suddenly, a terrible thought entered my mind. A thought so awful, so impossible, that I immediately pushed it away.
"No."
Absolutely not. But once you think something like that, once that seed is planted, it's impossible to completely ignore it. I drove home in silence, my mind racing, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. When Marcus finally came home that night, close to midnight, I was still awake, sitting in the dark living room. "Hey," he said, seeming surprised to see me. "I thought you'd be asleep. You okay?" "I told Eleanor about the baby today," I said. "Oh yeah?" I bet she was thrilled.
She was.
Jasmine was there too. Marcus went very still. "Jasmine, Eleanor's volunteer friend, the one who's staying at the house. You know her, right?"
I met her.
"Once or twice. When I visited Mother. She's pregnant too." The words hung in the air between us. Marcus's face betrayed nothing. "Is she?"
Well,
"That's nice for her." "Yeah," I said slowly. "Nice for her." Marcus came over, sat beside me on the couch, and took my hand. His palm was cold. "Mal, I know I didn't react the way you probably wanted me to when you told me about the baby. I was just surprised, you know? Caught off guard. But I'm happy. Really happy. We're going to have a family. This is everything we wanted." He leaned in and kissed my forehead. And I knew, deep in my bones, that my husband was lying to me. I just didn't know how much. Not yet. The next 3 months were among the strangest of my life. I was growing a human being inside my body, attending prenatal appointments by myself, because Marcus was always too busy at the hospital. I was watching my mother-in-law slowly die, spending hours at her bedside reading to her, helping her eat, holding her hand through waves of pain that morphed into a temporarily takeaway. And I was becoming increasingly obsessed with Jasmine Collier. Who was she really? Where did she come from? Why was Eleanor so protective of her? And most importantly, why was she living in Eleanor's house, pregnant, at the exact same time I was? I tried talking to Marcus about it, multiple times. "Don't you think it's strange?" I asked him one evening. We were in bed, both of us on our phones, existing in the same space but completely disconnected. "That this woman we barely know is living with your dying mother?" "Mother likes having company," Marcus said without looking up from whatever he was reading. "Patricia is only there during the day. Jasmine is there at night. It makes sense. But we could be there at night. We live 20 minutes away. Mal, you're pregnant.
You need rest.
Mother wouldn't want you exhausting yourself taking care of her around the clock. So instead, a stranger does it." Marcus finally looked at me, his expression carefully neutral. "Jasmine isn't a stranger. She's been volunteering with Mother's charities for over a year. Mother trusts her. That should be enough for you." Over a year? That caught me off guard. I'd only started noticing Jasmine 8 months ago, after Eleanor's diagnosis. "How do you know she's been volunteering for over a year?" Mother mentioned it. "When?" "I don't know, Mal, recently." "Why does it matter?" "It doesn't," I said, though we both knew that was a lie. "I'm just curious." Marcus went back to his phone. "Mother is dying. If having Jasmine there brings her comfort, then I'm grateful for it. You should be too." The conversation was over. Just like every conversation we had about Jasmine, about his mother, about anything that mattered, it hit a wall and died. I started doing my own research. It wasn't hard. Charleston was a small city when it came to society circles and charity organizations. If Jasmine Collier had really been volunteering with Eleanor's charities for over a year, someone would know her. I started with the Charleston Children's Hospital Foundation, Eleanor's primary charity. I'd been to dozens of their events over the years. I called the executive director, a woman named Patricia Hammond who'd known Eleanor for decades. "Patricia, hi. It's Mallory Bennett, Eleanor Ashford's daughter-in-law." "Mallory, darling, how are you?" "How's Eleanor doing?" "She's hanging in there. Listen, I'm trying to get in touch with one of her volunteers, Jasmine Collier. Do you have contact information for her?" There was a pause. "Jasmine Collier? I'm not familiar with that name. Let me check our volunteer roster." I heard typing in the background.
"No, I'm sorry.
"We don't have anyone by that name registered as a volunteer." "Are you sure she volunteers with us?" That's what Eleanor said. "Maybe she volunteers with a different organization."
Possibly.
"You could try the Gibby's Museum or the Preservation Society." Eleanor's involved with both. I tried them both. Neither had any record of Jasmine Collier. I tried the Charleston Garden Club, the Historic Charleston Foundation, and the Spoleto Festival. Nothing. Nowhere. No one had ever heard of Jasmine Collier. So either Eleanor had lied about Jasmine being a volunteer, or Jasmine had lied to Eleanor about volunteering, or I was losing my mind. I decided to talk to Eleanor directly. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I'd just come from a prenatal appointment where I'd found out I was having a boy. I should have been elated. Instead, I felt hollow. Marcus hadn't come to the appointment. He texted that morning saying he had an emergency surgery. I'd sat in that ultrasound room alone, watching my son move on the screen, and felt more isolated than I'd ever felt in my life. I drove straight to Eleanor's estate from the doctor's office. Patricia was just leaving for the day. She's had a rough morning, Patricia warned me. The pain is pretty bad today. She took her medication about an hour ago, so she might be a little loopy. Thanks for letting me know. I found Eleanor in her bedroom, propped up on pillows, staring out the window at her garden. She looked so small, so fragile. The cancer had stolen at least 30 pounds from her frame. Her elegant clothes hung loose. Her silver hair, always so perfectly styled, was thin now, wispy. Eleanor, I said softly from the doorway. She turned her head slowly, and when she saw me, she smiled. Mallory, sweetheart.
Come in.
I sat in the chair beside her bed, the same chair I'd occupied for countless hours over the past months. How are you feeling today? Like I'm dying, she said with a weak laugh. Because I am. But you didn't come here to talk about that. What's wrong? I can see it in your face. Something's bothering you. I took a breath. I had my ultrasound today. It's a boy. Eleanor's face lit up. A boy. Oh, Mallory, that's wonderful. A grandson. I'm so happy I got to know that before I go. Marcus didn't come to the appointment. The light in her eyes dimmed. He's busy at the hospital. He's always busy at the hospital. He's been busy at the hospital for the last 2 years. So busy that he barely exists in our marriage anymore. Eleanor reached for my hand. Her skin was paper-thin, cool to the touch. Marriage is hard, darling. Especially when you're both dealing with difficult things. Your fertility struggles, my illness, the stress of his career. These things take a toll. Is that all it is? Just stress? She looked at me for a long moment. What are you really asking me, Mallory? I'm asking about Jasmine Collier. Eleanor's grip on my hand tightened slightly. What about her? I called all of your charity organizations. None of them have any record of her volunteering. So either you lied to me about how you know her, or she lied to you, or there's something else going on that you're not telling me. Eleanor's face remained calm, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. Jasmine is. She's been through some difficult times. She needed help. I'm helping her. That's all you need to know. That's not all I need to know. She's living in your house, Eleanor. She's pregnant just like me. And every time I mention her, everyone acts like I'm crazy for being concerned. You're not crazy, Eleanor said quietly. You're perceptive. You always have been. It's one of the things I've always admired about you. Then tell me the truth. Who is Jasmine Collier? How do you really know her? And why is she here? Eleanor closed her eyes. For a moment, I thought she'd fallen asleep or that the medication had taken her under. But then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. If I tell you, it will destroy your marriage. It will destroy your family. It will destroy the life you've built here in Charleston. Are you sure you want to know? My heart was hammering in my chest. Yes. Eleanor opened her eyes and looked at me with such profound sadness that I almost told her to stop, that I didn't want to know after all. But I stayed silent. Jasmine is Marcus's mistress, Eleanor said. She's been his mistress for 3 years. The baby she's carrying is his child. And I've known about it from the very beginning. The room tilted. The air left my lungs. For several seconds, I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't think. No, I finally managed to say, that can't be true. I'm so sorry, Mallory. I'm so sorry. You're lying. You're confused from the medication. You don't know what you're saying. But even as I said it, everything clicked into place. The late nights. The conferences that probably never happened. The phone calls he wouldn't answer. The distance that had grown between us. His flat reaction to my pregnancy news. It all made horrible, perfect sense. How long have you known? I asked, my voice shaking. From the start. Marcus told me. He came to me 3 years ago, said he'd made a terrible mistake, that he'd gotten involved with a woman at a medical conference, that he'd ended it, but she was pregnant. 3 years ago, I repeated, when we were trying to have a baby. Yes. And you helped him hide it. You brought her here, to your house, to keep her close, to keep her secret. I thought if I could keep things contained, if I could manage the situation, that maybe you'd never have to know. That you could stay happy in your marriage. That my son could have his family and his child with Jasmine, and everyone could be, if not happy, then at least content. I stood up, so abruptly the chair fell backward. Content? You thought I'd be content living a lie? Being married to a man who was building an entire secret family while I was trying to give him children. I was trying to protect you, Eleanor said, and now she was crying. Real tears streaming down her gaunt face. I know that sounds insane, but I was trying to protect you. You're a good person, Mallory. The best person Marcus has ever had in his life. Better than he deserves. I didn't want you to be hurt. So you orchestrated an elaborate deception instead? For 3 years? While I had tea with you every Thursday and told you about my fertility struggles and my marriage problems, you sat there knowing exactly why I couldn't get pregnant, knowing exactly why my husband was distant, and you said nothing. What would you have had me do? Destroy my son's marriage? Destroy your life? I thought if I kept Jasmine here, under my watch, I could at least make sure she didn't cause trouble. Where does she think she stands in all this? Does she know about me? Eleanor nodded miserably. She knows. She's always known. Marcus promised her that once certain things were in place, he'd leave you and be with her. Certain things? What certain things? Eleanor looked away. I don't know all the details. You're lying. You know exactly what details. You've been orchestrating this whole thing. Mallory, please, I'm dying. I don't have much time left. I couldn't die without you knowing the truth. I couldn't let you spend the rest of your life married to my son without understanding who he really is. How noble of you, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Unburdening your conscience while you're on your deathbed. Very convenient timing. I deserve that. I deserve your anger. But please believe me when I say I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. You've been hurting me for 3 years. Every Thursday we had tea. Every time you gave me advice about my marriage, every time you told me to be patient with Marcus, you were actively participating in my betrayal. I grabbed my purse, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Mallory, where are you going? Away from you. Away from this house. Away from all of you. Please don't leave like this. Let's talk. Let's figure out what to do. What to do? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Eleanor, you've had 3 years to figure out what to do. The time for talking is long over. I made it to my car before the sobs started. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the panic attack that was crushing my chest. My husband had been cheating on me for 3 years. He had another child on the way. His mother had helped him hide it. Everyone I trusted had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. And I was pregnant with his son. I don't know how long I sat in that car. Long enough that the sun started to set. Long enough that my phone buzzed multiple times with texts from Eleanor that I didn't read. Finally, I drove home. Our beautiful historic townhouse on Trad Street that Eleanor had given us as a wedding present. The house that I now understood was probably part of the certain things that needed to be in place before Marcus could leave me. I wondered what else there was. What other assets, what other investments, what other parts of my life were actually traps waiting to spring. Marcus wasn't home. Of course he wasn't. He was probably with Jasmine, probably had been with Jasmine all those nights he claimed to be at the hospital. I walked through our house like a stranger, seeing everything with new eyes. The photos on the walls of our wedding day, our honeymoon, Christmases and birthdays and dinner parties. All of it had been a lie. All of it had been happening while he maintained an entire separate life with another woman. In his office, I started looking through drawers. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Evidence, maybe. Proof. Something tangible to confirm what Eleanor had told me. I found it in a locked drawer in his desk. The key was taped to the underside of the center drawer, because Marcus had always been predictable in his hiding places. Inside were manila folders. Lots of them. I pulled them out and spread them across his desk. Bank statements for an account I didn't know existed. Statements showing regular deposits of $3,000 every month to J.'s Collier. Copies of a lease agreement for an apartment on East Bay Street. The tenant was listed as Jasmine Collier. The person responsible for payment was Marcus Ashford. Medical records. Jasmine's prenatal records. She was 27 weeks pregnant. Her due date was in early August. I was 21 weeks pregnant. My due date was in late September. He was going to have 2 sons 6 weeks apart. There were more documents. Insurance papers listing Jasmine as a dependent. A will, recently updated, that left half of his estate to any children born from his relationship with Jasmine Marie Collier. And at the bottom of the stack, a document that made my blood run cold. It was a draft of divorce papers. Petitioner, Marcus James Ashford. Respondent, Mallory Grace Bennett Ashford.
Grounds.
Irreconcilable differences. The document was dated 2 months ago. Right around the time I'd found out I was pregnant. He'd been planning to divorce me. He'd been planning to leave me for Jasmine. And then I'd gotten pregnant, and that had complicated his plan. Certain things needed to be in place, Eleanor had said. He'd been moving assets. Preparing to leave me with as little as possible. Setting Jasmine up in an apartment, putting her on his insurance, writing her into his will. He'd been building a life with her while systematically dismantling the life he had with me. I heard the front door open. Marcus called out, "You home?" I didn't answer. I just stood there in his office, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, waiting. He appeared in the doorway, still in his scrubs, looking tired. When he saw the papers spread across his desk, the color drained from his face. "Mal, I can explain. Can you?" My voice was surprisingly calm. "Can you explain why you've been cheating on me for 3 years? Can you explain why you have a pregnant mistress living with your mother? Can you explain why you were planning to divorce me 2 months ago, but didn't because I got pregnant and ruined your timing?" He stepped into the room, his hands raised as if approaching a dangerous animal. "Let me explain. Please. Just let me explain."
Fine.
"Explain."
I'm listening.
He sat down heavily in his desk chair, his head in his hands. For a long moment he said nothing. It started at a conference in Atlanta. He finally said, 3.5 years ago. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't unhappy in our marriage. It happened. We were both drunk. It was one night. One stupid, meaningless night. But it wasn't meaningless, was it? Because she got pregnant. He nodded. She called me 2 months later. Told me she was pregnant, that she wanted to keep it. I panicked. I told her I was married, that I couldn't be with her, that I'd support the baby financially, but that was all I could do. But that's not all you did.
No.
I kept seeing her. At first it was just to work out the logistics of the pregnancy, the birth, child support. But then I developed feelings for her. Real feelings. While you were married to me. While we were trying to have a baby together. I know how it sounds.
Do you? Do you really?
Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you built an entire secret life with another woman while pretending to be a loving husband to me. It sounds like you got your mother to help you hide your mistress. It sounds like you were planning to divorce me and leave me with nothing while you rode off into the sunset with your perfect little family. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Marcus? Tell me. Help me understand how any of this is anything other than the most calculated, cruel betrayal imaginable. He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Real tears. Or maybe just an excellent performance. I love her, he said quietly. I love Jasmine. I didn't plan to. I didn't want to. But I do. And when I found out she was pregnant with my son, I realized I wanted to be with them. I wanted to be a real father to that child, not some absent figure who sends checks every month. So, you decided to leave me.
Yes.
I was going to tell you. I was going to end our marriage cleanly, fairly. But then you got pregnant, and everything got complicated. Complicated. I repeated. That's what you call it. Complicated. Mallory, I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted any of this to happen this way. But it did happen this way. You made choices. You made decision after decision that led us here. And your mother helped you. She knew everything, and she helped you. Marcus nodded. She was trying to protect everyone. She thought if she could keep Jasmine close, keep the situation controlled, that maybe we could all come out of this okay. All come out of this okay? I laughed. A harsh, bitter sound. Marcus, you have a pregnant wife and a pregnant mistress. There is no version of this where everyone comes out okay. I know.
Do you? Do you really?
Because you seem to have convinced yourself that this is all somehow manageable. That you can have your cake and eat it too. That you can have 2 families, 2 sons, and somehow not destroy everyone in the process. What do you want me to say, Mallory?
I'm sorry.
I'm so fucking sorry. I made terrible choices. I hurt you. I know I can never make this right. You're right. You can't. I gathered all the papers from his desk and put them back in the folder. What are you doing? He asked. I'm taking these. I'm taking evidence of your deception. And I'm going to find the best divorce attorney in Charleston, and I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done. Mallory, please. Can we talk about this? Can we try to figure something out? Figure what out? You love Jasmine. You want to be with her. Fine. Be with her. But you're not taking everything I have in the process. This house? It's in both our names. Any assets we've acquired during our marriage? Community property. That trust fund from your father? That becomes marital property too. You want a divorce? I'll give you a divorce. But you're going to pay for it. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Marcus? I'm having your son in September. So you'll get your wish. 2 boys, 6 weeks apart. I hope you're ready for child support payments to 2 different women for the next 18 years. I hope Jasmine understands what she's getting into. Because I certainly didn't. I left him sitting in his office and went upstairs to pack a bag. I couldn't stay in that house another night. I couldn't sleep in a bed I'd shared with a man who'd been living a double life for years. I called Simone from my car.
Ma?
What's wrong? You sound upset. Can I stay with you tonight? I can't. I can't be here right now. Of course. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? The baby's fine. I'm not. I'll explain when I get there. I drove to Simone's apartment in Mount Pleasant, and when she opened the door and saw my face, she pulled me into a hug and let me cry on her shoulder for what felt like hours. Eventually, I told her everything. About Marcus and Jasmine. About Eleanor knowing and hiding it. About the 3 years of lies and deception. About the draft divorce papers and the will and the apartment on East Bay Street. That bastard, Simone said when I finished. That absolute bastard. And Eleanor, oh my God. Mallory, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do, I said. I'm pregnant with his child. I can't just walk away. But I can't stay married to him either. You get a lawyer. The best lawyer. And you fight. You fight for yourself and for your son. You don't let them take anything more from you. She was right. I knew she was right. But as I lay in Simone's guest room that night, my hand on my growing belly, feeling my son move inside me, all I could think about was how completely my life had shattered in the span of a single day. I'd lost my husband. I'd lost my mother-in-law, or at least the version of her I thought I knew. I'd lost my trust, my security, my sense of who I was. And I still had 4 months of pregnancy ahead of me, followed by raising a child with a man I now despised. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Marcus and 12 from Eleanor. I called Eleanor first. She answered on the first ring. Mallory, thank God. I've been so worried. Don't, I said. Don't pretend to care about me now. I do care about you. I've always cared about you. You have a funny way of showing it. Can I see you? Please? I need to talk to you. I need to explain properly. There's nothing left to explain, Eleanor.
You knew your son was cheating on me.
You helped him hide it. You lied to my face for 3 years. What could you possibly have to say that would change any of that? I can tell you everything. All the details you don't know yet. All the things Marcus hasn't told you.
Please, Mallory.
Give me a chance to tell you the whole truth before I run out of time. I should have said no. I should have hung up and never spoken to her again. But I needed answers. I needed to understand how this had happened, how the woman I'd trusted like a mother had betrayed me so completely. I'll come by this afternoon, I said. But this is the last time, Eleanor. After today, I never want to see you again. I understand, she said quietly. Thank you. I spent the morning with Simone, who helped me contact 3 of Charleston's top divorce attorneys. 2 of them could see me within the week. The third could meet that very afternoon if I wanted to come by before visiting Eleanor. I took the appointment. His name was Jonathan Reynolds, and his office was in a renovated building on Broad Street. He was in his 50s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, and his walls were covered with awards and certifications and photos of him with various Charleston politicians and business leaders. "Mrs. Ashford," he said, shaking my hand, "please sit down. Tell me what brings you here." I told him everything. He took notes, asked clarifying questions, and by the end of my explanation, he was nodding. "This is a strong case," he said. "Your husband attempted to hide assets, prepared for divorce without your knowledge, and maintained a long-term affair. South Carolina is a fault state, which means adultery is grounds for divorce and can significantly affect the settlement. We can argue for the house, for spousal support, for a significant portion of all marital assets. I don't want to destroy him," I said. "I just want what's fair. What I'm owed after 7 years of marriage and 3 years of lies. Fair is exactly what will get you," Jonathan said. "But Mrs. Ashford, I need to warn you. This is going to get ugly. Your husband won't want to give up his assets. His mother might try to intervene. Jasmine Collier could become a factor. Are you prepared for a fight?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I'm prepared." "Good. Then, let's get started." That afternoon, I drove to Eleanor's estate for what I knew would be the last time. Patricia met me at the door, her expression sympathetic. "She's in her room," Patricia said quietly. "She's been asking for you all day. Whatever happened between you two, just be gentle with her, okay? She doesn't have much time left." I nodded but said nothing. Eleanor was in bed, looking worse than I'd ever seen her. Her skin had a grayish tinge. Her breathing was labored. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You came." I said I would. I sat in the chair by her bed, the same chair where she'd dropped the bomb that had destroyed my world. "I'm dying, Mallory," Eleanor said. "We both know it. I have weeks left, maybe days. And I need to do right by you before I go. I need to tell you everything, so you can protect yourself and your son."
I'm listening.
And so Eleanor told me everything. She told me that Marcus's affair had started not at a conference in Atlanta, but right here in Charleston, with a nurse who worked at Roper Hospital. That the affair had been going on not for 3 years, but for 5, almost from the start of our marriage. She told me that Jasmine wasn't his first mistress. There had been others. Short affairs, mostly. Women he'd meet at conferences or at the hospital. But Jasmine was different. Jasmine got pregnant, and that changed everything. She told me that Marcus had come to her when Jasmine was 3 months pregnant, panicked and desperate. That Eleanor had offered to house Jasmine, to keep her secret, to make sure the baby was cared for. But not out of kindness. Out of a desire to control the situation, to keep her son's reputation intact. "I put Jasmine in an apartment first," Eleanor explained. "But Marcus kept visiting her there, kept being seen with her. I was worried people would find out, that it would damage his career, damage our family name. So I brought her here, told everyone she was a volunteer, helping me through my illness. And I could watch her. I could make sure she didn't tell anyone. I could keep everything contained." "You treated her like a prisoner," I said. "I treated her like a problem that needed managing. And I know how that sounds. I know it's wrong. But Mallory, you have to understand. My son is all I have. His father died. Marcus is my legacy. I couldn't let him throw away his career, his marriage, his place in this community for a mistake." "A mistake?" "Eleanor, he has a whole other family. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Multiple choices, made over and over again." "You're right. You're absolutely right. And I enabled those choices. I made them possible. I'm as guilty as he is, maybe more so. Why are you telling me all this now?" Eleanor reached for my hand. I almost pulled away, but something in her expression stopped me. "Because Marcus is going to try to take everything from you. The house, the money, even custody of your son when he's born. He's been planning it for years. Those draft divorce papers you found? That was version 3. He's been working with his own attorney, moving money into accounts I don't have access to, preparing to leave you with as little as possible. And you knew about this?" "I found out about it 6 months ago. I confronted him. He told me it was necessary, that he needed to protect his future with Jasmine, that you'd be fine. I told him he was making a terrible mistake. We fought. We haven't spoken properly since. That's why you told me the truth yesterday. Not because you felt guilty. Because you're angry at him. Both, Eleanor said. I felt guilty, and I was angry. I'm still angry. He's becoming someone I don't recognize. Someone cruel and calculated. And I couldn't die knowing I'd helped him do that to you. She squeezed my hand tighter. In my safe, in my closet, there's a folder. It has copies of all the financial documents Marcus doesn't know I have. Bank statements, investment records, property deeds. Everything you'll need to fight him in divorce court.
Take it.
Use it. Make sure he doesn't leave you with nothing. Why would you do that? He's your son. Because you're carrying my grandson. And that child deserves a mother who isn't broken and destitute. That child deserves the security and stability his father is trying to take away. Tears were streaming down Eleanor's face now. I know I can never make this right, Mallory. I know what I've done is unforgivable. But please, please take those documents. Protect yourself. Protect your son. Don't let Marcus destroy you the way I let him destroy our family. I sat there for a long moment, trying to process everything she told me. Where's Jasmine now? I finally asked.
She left.
2 days ago, after you found out about everything, Marcus moved her to a hotel. He's afraid you'll confront her. He's right to be afraid. I stood up and went to Eleanor's closet. The safe was right where she said it would be. She told me the combination, and inside was a thick manila folder stuffed with documents. I pulled it out and flipped through it. She was right. Everything was here. Account numbers, wire transfer records, property holdings I didn't even know existed. This was ammunition. This was power. Thank you, I said, and I meant it, even though I was still furious with her. Mallory, Eleanor said as I walked toward the door. I know you said this was the last time you'd see me. And I understand. I do. But when I die, when you're standing at my funeral, please remember that despite everything, despite all my terrible choices and mistakes, I did love you. You were the daughter I never had. And I'm so sorry I failed you. I couldn't respond. If I opened my mouth, I'd either scream or sob, and I didn't want to give her either. I just left. As I walked down the grand staircase of the Ashford estate for the last time, passing portraits of generations of Ashfords staring down at me with judgmental eyes, I made a decision. Marcus wanted a war? I'd give him a war. He thought I was just some naive girl from upstate New York who'd gotten lucky marrying into Charleston society. He was about to find out exactly how wrong he was. And when Eleanor died, when the entire city gathered to mourn the great Eleanor Ashford, the pillar of Charleston society, the woman everyone admired, I was going to make sure they knew exactly who they were really mourning. I was going to tell them everything. Eleanor died 6 days later. I got the call at 3 in the morning. It was Patricia, the home health aide, her voice shaking. Mrs. Bennett? I'm so sorry to call so late. Eleanor passed about an hour ago. It was peaceful. She went in her sleep. I sat up in bed at Simone's apartment, where I'd been staying since leaving Marcus. My hand went instinctively to my belly, to my son, who was moving around inside me like he knew something had changed. Thank you for letting me know, I said. Is Marcus there? He's on his way. He asked me to call you. Of course he did. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time. I should have felt something. Grief, maybe. Relief that her suffering was over. Anger that she'd left me to deal with the mess she'd helped create. But I felt nothing. Just a strange, cold emptiness. Eleanor Ashford was dead. The woman who'd welcomed me into her family, who'd mentored me, who'd become like a mother to me, who'd then betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible, was gone. And in 6 days, when Charleston gathered to mourn her, I was going to destroy her memory. The thought should have frightened me. It should have made me question my sanity. But instead, it filled me with something that felt almost like peace. Marcus called 20 minutes later. Mal, I know you're probably not interested in talking to me right now, but Mother's gone. She died tonight. I know. Patricia called.
Oh, right.
Of course she did. There was a pause. We need to talk about the funeral arrangements.
We.
You're still my wife. You're still part of this family. People will expect you to be involved in planning mother service. I almost laughed. Let me get this straight. You've been cheating on me for 5 years. You have a pregnant mistress. You were planning to divorce me and take everything I have. But now you want me to play the grieving daughter-in-law for the sake of appearances? It's not about appearances. It's about respecting mother's memory. Her memory, I repeated slowly. You mean the memory of the woman who helped you hide your affair? The woman who housed your mistress while lying to my face for 3 years? That memory. Mallory, please.
Not now.
Mother just died. Can we at least have a few days before we go back to fighting? Something in his voice made me pause. He sounded genuinely devastated. For all his faults, for all his lies and betrayals, Marcus had loved his mother. In his own selfish, damaged way, he had loved her.
Fine, I said.
We'll call a truce until after the funeral. But Marcus? After we put Eleanor in the ground, all bets are off. I understand. The funeral was scheduled for the following Saturday at St. Catherine's Church, the same church where Marcus and I had been married 7 years ago. Eleanor had planned every detail of her funeral years in advance, because that's who Eleanor was. She controlled everything, right up until the moment she could no longer control anything. The service would be at 11 in the morning. There would be a reception afterward at the Charleston Place Hotel. Eleanor had specifically requested that Marcus deliver the main eulogy, with additional remembrances from her closest friends and family members. I was listed in the program as one of those family members expected to speak. That's when I knew exactly what I was going to do. I spent the next 5 days preparing. I wrote and rewrote my speech. I practiced delivering it in Simone's apartment, timing myself, working on my tone, my pacing, my facial expressions. Simone watched with increasing concern. Mal, are you sure about this? She asked on Thursday night, 3 days before the funeral. Once you say these things publicly, you can't take them back. Marcus will never forgive you. His family will ostracize you. All of Charleston society will turn on you. I know. And you're okay with that? I looked at her, this friend who'd stuck by me through everything, and I realized something. I wasn't just okay with it. I wanted it. I wanted Marcus to hurt the way I hurt. I wanted his family to feel the shame they should feel. I wanted Charleston society to know the truth about the people they elevated and admired. Eleanor told me something before she died, I said. She said that when she was gone, when I was standing at her funeral, I should remember that she loved me, that I was like a daughter to her. She did love you, in her own twisted way. Maybe. But you know what? Love without respect, without honesty, without basic human decency, isn't really love at all. It's just control dressed up in pretty words. And I'm done being controlled. Friday afternoon, the day before the funeral, Marcus called again. I need to pick up some of Mother's things from this state. I thought maybe we could go together, go through her jewelry and personal items. There are things she wanted you to have. I don't want anything from Eleanor. Mallory, please. She left you specific items in her will. Her pearl earrings, the ones she wore at our wedding. Her grandmother's engagement ring. You can't just refuse them. Watch me. At least come to the estate. We need to talk about the funeral, about the program, about who's speaking when. I knew what he was really doing. He was trying to manage me, trying to make sure I wasn't going to cause problems at the funeral, just like his mother would have done.
Fine.
I'll meet you there at 3. The Ashford estate looked different in the late afternoon light. Darker somehow. More imposing. I parked my car in the circular driveway and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. This was the last time I'd ever come here. After tomorrow, after the funeral, I'd never set foot in this house again. Marcus met me at the door. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen. He hadn't shaved in days. His clothes looked like he'd slept in them. Thanks for coming, he said quietly. I followed him inside. The house was eerily silent. No Eleanor calling out from the sunroom. No Patricia bustling around with medications and meal trays. Just empty rooms filled with antiques and memories. We went upstairs to Eleanor's bedroom. Someone had already stripped the bed, cleaned the room, removed all the medical equipment. It looked like a bedroom in a museum now. Beautiful but lifeless. Marcus opened Eleanor's jewelry box on her dresser. She wanted you to have these, he said, pulling out a pair of pearl earrings I recognized immediately. Eleanor had worn them at our wedding, at every major event in our lives together. I told you I don't want them. Mallory, please.
Take them.
If not for Mother, then for our son. These will be part of his family history someday. His family history, I repeated. You mean the history of lies and betrayals and secrets? That family history. Marcus closed his eyes. I know you're angry. You have every right to be angry. But can we please not do this here, in Mother's room, the day before her funeral? When should we do it, Marcus? When is the right time to talk about how you destroyed our marriage? How you destroyed any respect I had for your family? When would be convenient for you? I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about it. I'm just saying not here, not now. I looked at him standing there, holding his dead mother's pearls, looking so genuinely broken, and I felt something shift inside me. This was it. This was the moment when I could still turn back. I could take the pearls, play my part at the funeral, say something generic and respectful about Eleanor, and then pursue my divorce quietly, privately, without blowing up his entire world the way he'd blown up mine. But then I remembered sitting in that ultrasound room alone, watching my son move on the screen while Marcus was probably with Jasmine. I remembered Eleanor's face during our Thursday tease, smiling at me while knowing exactly why my marriage was falling apart. I remembered finding those draft divorce papers, seeing exactly how much he'd been planning to take from me. And I knew I wasn't going to take the high road. I'll speak at the funeral tomorrow, I said. But I'm going to say what I want to say. You don't get to control that. You don't get to manage me anymore. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. What are you planning to say? You'll find out tomorrow, along with everyone else. Mallory, if you're thinking of making some kind of scene, a scene? At your mother's funeral? Marcus, I would never. Eleanor deserves to be remembered properly. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure everyone remembers who she really was. I could see the panic starting to bloom on his face.
Good.
Let him panic. Let him spend the night wondering what I was going to say. Let him feel a fraction of the anxiety and fear I'd felt for the past week. The program says you're speaking right after Mother's friend Margaret and before me, Marcus said carefully. Usually those family remembrances are short. 5 minutes, maybe. I'll take as much time as I need. Reverend Patterson is officiating. If you try to turn this into some kind of spectacle, he'll cut you off. Then I guess I'd better make sure what I say is too compelling to interrupt. I turned and walked out of Eleanor's bedroom, down the grand staircase, past the portraits of all those judgmental Ashford ancestors.
Marcus followed me.
Mallory, please. Whatever you're planning, think about our son. Think about what this will do to him, growing up knowing his mother destroyed his father's reputation at his grandmother's funeral. I stopped at the front door and turned to face him. You know what I think about, Marcus? I think about our son growing up knowing his father cheated on his mother for their entire marriage. I think about him knowing his father had a half-brother born 6 weeks before him. I think about him knowing his grandmother helped orchestrate one of the most elaborate betrayals imaginable. That's what keeps me up at night. Not what I'm going to say tomorrow, but what I'm going to tell our son when he's old enough to ask why his parents hate each other. We don't have to hate each other. You're right. We don't have to. But we do.
Because of choices you made.
Because of lies you told. Because you treated our marriage like it was disposable the moment something shinier came along. I opened the door. I'll see you tomorrow at the church, Marcus. Try to get some sleep. You're going to need it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in Simone's guest bed, staring at the ceiling, going over my speech in my head again and again. My son kicked and moved inside me, like he could sense my agitation. I'm sorry, I whispered to him, my hand on my belly. I'm sorry your father is who he is. I'm sorry your grandmother was who she was. I'm sorry you're being born into this mess. But I promise you, I will always tell you the truth. I will never lie to you the way they lied to me. He kicked again, hard, like he was answering me. Simone knocked on my door around midnight. Can't sleep either? She asked, sitting on the edge of my bed. Too much going through my head. You can still change your mind, you know, about tomorrow. You can give a normal eulogy, say the expected things, and deal with Marcus privately. I could, I agreed, but I'm not going to. Why not? What do you really get out of exposing everything publicly? I thought about that question for a long time. The truth, I finally said. I get the truth. For 7 years, I lived in a marriage built on lies. For 3 years, I had tea with a woman who was actively helping my husband betray me. Everyone in Charleston thinks the Ashfords are this perfect family, this pillar of society. They think Eleanor was a saint. They think Marcus is this brilliant, dedicated doctor who's devoted to his patients. It's all a lie. All of it. And I'm tired of being the only one who knows the truth. But after tomorrow, you won't be the only one. Everyone will know. And they'll judge you for it. They'll say you were bitter, vindictive, that you couldn't let a dying woman rest in peace. Let them say it. I'd rather be judged for telling the truth than praised for maintaining a lie. Simone hugged me. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You know that. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified. That's what makes you strong. You're terrified, but you're doing it anyway. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright. One of those perfect Charleston spring days, all blue skies and flowering trees and warm breezes off the harbor. I put on the black dress I'd bought specifically for this occasion. Not morning black, but power black. A dress that said I was done being the victim, done being managed and controlled. Simone drove me to the church. We arrived early, before most of the other mourners. The church was already filled with flowers. White lilies, Eleanor's favorite. The casket was at the front, closed, covered with a spray of white roses. I walked down the aisle slowly, my hand on my belly, and stood in front of Eleanor's casket. I hope you're watching, I whispered. I hope wherever you are, you can see what's about to happen. You spent your whole life controlling everything, managing everyone. But you can't control this. You can't stop what I'm about to do. Mallory. I turned. It was Reverend Patterson, the elderly minister who'd married Marcus and me, who'd known the Ashford family for 40 years. Reverend, I said, thank you for officiating today. Of course, my dear. Eleanor was a pillar of this community. It's an honor to celebrate her life. He paused, looking at me with concern. Marcus mentioned you'll be speaking today. He seemed worried about what you might say. Did he? I want you to know that while grief affects us all differently, this is a solemn occasion. Eleanor's funeral should be a time to honor her memory, not to air grievances or family disputes. I smiled. Reverend Patterson, I promise you, everything I say today will be about honoring Eleanor's memory. Every single word will be the truth about who she was and what she did. Isn't that what funerals are for? Telling the truth about the deceased. He looked uncertain, but nodded. Well, yes, of course. The truth spoken in love. Exactly. People started arriving. Hundreds of them. Charleston society in their funeral blacks, whispering in hushed tones, signing the guest book, taking their seats in the pews. I recognized so many faces. Eleanor's Bridge Club friends. Her Garden Club associates. Doctors from Roper Hospital. Members of the Historic Preservation Society, the mayor, 2 city council members, all of Charleston's elite gathered to mourn one of their own. And they had no idea what was coming. Marcus arrived with his aunt and uncle, Eleanor's brother and sister-in-law. He looked marginally better than he had yesterday. Clean-shaven, wearing a black suit, his hair combed. But his eyes were still haunted. He saw me sitting in the front pew and started to approach. But I turned away. I couldn't talk to him. Not now. If I talked to him, I might lose my nerve. The service began at exactly 11 o'clock. Reverend Patterson gave a brief opening prayer. Then the organist played Amazing Grace. Then Margaret Pemberton, Eleanor's oldest friend, stood up to give the first remembrance. Margaret talked about meeting Eleanor in college, about their 60-year friendship, about Eleanor's grace and elegance and dedication to Charleston. She cried while she spoke. Real tears for a woman she genuinely loved. I felt nothing. Then it was my turn. Reverend Patterson announced my name. Mallory Bennett Ashford, Eleanor's daughter-in-law, would like to share some words. I stood up. My legs felt shaky. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. My son kicked inside me, hard, like he was giving me courage. I walked to the podium. 600 faces stared up at me. Marcus was in the front row, his face pale, his hands gripping the edge of the pew. I adjusted the microphone. I took a breath, and I began. Thank you all for being here today to honor Eleanor Ashford. My name is Mallory Bennett Ashford, and 7 years ago, Eleanor welcomed me into the Ashford family. She became more than just my mother-in-law. She became my mentor, my friend, someone I trusted completely. Someone I loved. I paused. A few people in the audience nodded sympathetically. Eleanor taught me so much during the years I knew her. She taught me about Charleston society, about hosting dinner parties, about which charities mattered, and which events I needed to attend. She taught me how to navigate a world I hadn't grown up in. She was patient with me.
Kind to me.
Or at least, that's what I thought. I saw Marcus's eyes widen. He started to half-stand, but his uncle grabbed his arm and pulled him back down. You see, Eleanor also taught me something else. She taught me that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who betray us deepest. She taught me that kindness can be a mask for manipulation. She taught me that love without honesty is just another form of control. Murmurs rippled through the church. Reverend Patterson was staring at me, clearly uncertain whether to intervene. I kept going. Many of you here today know that Eleanor was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 18 months ago. What you might not know is how she chose to spend her final years. Let me tell you a story about those years. It's a true story. Every word of it is true. And I think it's important that you all know the real Eleanor Ashford, not just the version she wanted you to see. Marcus stood up. Mallory, stop. Please. I ignored him. 3 years ago, my husband Marcus began an affair with a woman named Jasmine Collier. She was a nurse at Roper Hospital. She got pregnant with his child. And when Marcus panicked about this pregnancy, about how it might destroy his reputation and his marriage, he went to his mother for help. Gasps echoed through the church. People started whispering. The mayor's wife had her hand over her mouth, and Eleanor helped him. She brought Jasmine into her home. She told everyone, including me, that Jasmine was a volunteer helping her through her illness. But really, Jasmine was my husband's mistress. She was carrying my husband's child. And for 3 years, Eleanor helped Marcus hide this affair from me. That's enough. Marcus shouted. Reverend Patterson, stop her. But Reverend Patterson didn't move. He was staring at me with something that looked almost like horror, but he didn't stop me. I had tea with Eleanor every Thursday. I continued, my voice steady despite the chaos I was creating. Every Thursday for years, I told her about my fertility struggles. I told her how distant Marcus had become. I asked her for advice about saving my marriage. And every Thursday, she sat across from me, looked me in the eye, and lied. She knew exactly why I couldn't get pregnant. She knew exactly why my husband was distant. She knew everything. And she said nothing. Margaret Pemberton was crying again, but these weren't tears of grief. These were tears of shock. Eleanor died 6 days ago. Right before she died, she told me the truth. All of it. She gave me documents proving what Marcus had done, proving that he'd been planning to divorce me, proving that he'd been systematically hiding assets to leave me with as little as possible. She did this not because she felt guilty, but because she was angry at Marcus for becoming someone even she couldn't control. I looked directly at Marcus.
His face was red.
Tears were streaming down his cheeks. His aunt had her arm around him, but he was shaking. Eleanor spent her last 3 years orchestrating one of the most elaborate betrayals I've ever witnessed. She played the role of loving mother-in-law while actively helping my husband destroy our marriage. And she was good at it. So convincing that I never suspected. I trusted her completely. I loved her. My voice broke slightly on that last sentence, the first real emotion I'd shown. So, when Marcus asked me to speak today, to honor his mother's memory, I thought long and hard about what to say. I thought about lying, about giving you the eulogy you expected, about talking about Eleanor's charity work and her grace, and her place in Charleston society. I thought about protecting her memory the way she tried to protect her son. I paused, looking out at the sea of shocked faces. But then I realized something. The best way to honor Eleanor is to tell the truth about her, because that's what she wanted. In her final days, she wanted the truth to come out.
She wanted me to know who she really was.
She wanted me to understand exactly what kind of woman she was. I picked up the folder I'd brought with me, Eleanor's folder from the safe. So, here's the truth about Eleanor Ashford. She was intelligent, elegant, and utterly ruthless. She valued reputation over integrity, appearance over reality, control over honesty. She helped her son betray his wife because she thought it was more important to protect the Ashford name than to do what was right. She died knowing she'd destroyed multiple lives in pursuit of maintaining a perfect image. I closed the folder. That's who Eleanor really was. And now you all know it too. The church erupted. People were talking over each other, some standing up, some crying. Marcus was being held back by his uncle, clearly wanting to rush the podium. Reverend Patterson finally found his voice. "Mrs. Ashford, I think that's quite enough." "I'm done," I said. "I've said everything I needed to say." I walked down from the podium, down the aisle, through the chaos I'd created. People reached out to me, some with sympathy, some with anger, some with shock. I ignored them all. Simone was waiting for me at the back of the church. "Let's go," I said. We walked out into the bright Charleston sunshine. Behind us, the church was in absolute chaos. The funeral was ruined. Eleanor's carefully planned memorial had become a scandal, and I felt lighter than I'd felt in months. "Oh my God," Simone said as we got to her car. "Mallory, you actually did it. You really did it." "I did. How do you feel?" I thought about that question. How did I feel? "Free," I finally said. "I feel free." My phone started ringing immediately. Marcus calling over and over. Then texts started flooding in. From his aunt, from Eleanor's friends, from people I barely knew. I turned my phone off. "What happens now?" Simone asked as we drove away from St. Catherine's Church. "Now," I said, my hand on my belly, on my son who would be born into all this mess. "Now the real fight begins." Because exposing the truth was just the first step. Now I had to make sure Marcus paid for what he'd done. Now I had to make sure I didn't lose everything in the divorce he'd been planning for years. Now I had to protect my son and build a life that wasn't built on lies. The funeral speech was just the beginning.
The war was just starting.
And I was ready. The scandal exploded across Charleston like a bomb. By that afternoon, my funeral speech was the only thing anyone in the city could talk about. By evening, it had spread to social media. Someone had recorded the whole thing on their phone and posted it online. Within 24 hours, the video had over 2 million views. The headlines were brutal. Charleston society widow exposes husband's affair at mother-in-law's funeral. Pregnant woman's revenge. The truth about the Ashford family. Doctor's secret life revealed in shocking eulogy. My phone, even turned off, was flooded with voicemails and texts when I finally turned it back on Sunday morning. Reporters wanted interviews. Talk shows wanted me as a guest. People I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, some supportive, some horrified, some just wanting gossip. Jonathan Reynolds, my attorney, called first thing Monday morning. "Mallory, what you did was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the most reckless. I honestly can't decide which." Does it matter? It matters because Marcus's attorney is going to use this. They're going to paint you as unstable, vindictive, someone who can't be trusted with custody of your child. Let them try. I told the truth. Every single word I said was true, and I have documents to prove it. I know. And that's what's going to save you. But Mallory, you need to be prepared. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. He was right. Marcus filed for divorce 3 days after the funeral. His petition claimed I was emotionally unstable, that I'd publicly humiliated him and his family, that I'd shown myself to be unfit for shared custody of our unborn child. My response, filed through Jonathan, was devastating. We included copies of all the documents Eleanor had given me. The bank statements showing payments to Jasmine. The lease agreement for her apartment. Marcus's draft divorce papers. The updated will leaving money to Jasmine's child. Medical records proving Jasmine was pregnant with his child. Everything. We also included testimony from Patricia, Eleanor's home health aide, who confirmed that Jasmine had been living at the estate for 3 years, that Marcus visited her regularly, that Eleanor had explicitly told Patricia the situation was to be kept secret from me. The case became a media sensation. Not just in Charleston but nationally. I was simultaneously painted as a hero standing up for betrayed wives everywhere and as a villain who'd ruined a funeral for revenge. I didn't care what they called me. I cared about winning. The preliminary hearings were brutal. Marcus's attorney, a shark named Gerald Chambers, tried everything. He claimed I'd stolen documents from Eleanor's safe. He claimed I was having a breakdown due to pregnancy hormones. He claimed my funeral speech was evidence of mental instability. But Jonathan was better. Your Honor, he said during one particularly heated hearing, Mr. Ashford wants this court to believe that telling the truth constitutes mental instability. He wants us to believe that exposing his years of adultery and financial manipulation makes Mrs. Ashford unfit to be a mother. But the evidence is clear. Mr. Ashford conducted a 5-year affair. He fathered a child with another woman while married to my client. He systematically hid assets in preparation for divorcing her. He enlisted his own mother's help in maintaining this deception. The only person who's demonstrated a pattern of dishonesty and moral bankruptcy is Mr. Ashford himself. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Patricia Whitmore, was not impressed with Marcus. Mr. Chambers, she said during one hearing, your client's behavior has been reprehensible. The affair is proven. The financial manipulation is proven. The deception is proven. I suggest you focus less on attacking Mrs. Ashford's character and more on negotiating a fair settlement. Marcus's world crumbled piece by piece. Roper Hospital launched an internal investigation after it came out that Marcus had been conducting an affair with a nurse who worked under his supervision. That was a clear violation of hospital ethics policies. 3 weeks after the funeral, he was put on administrative leave pending the investigation's outcome. His social standing in Charleston evaporated overnight. Invitations to events stopped coming. His friends, the ones who'd been our friends, distanced themselves. Some reached out to me privately, apologizing for not seeing what was happening, offering support. The Charleston medical community, which had once admired Marcus as a brilliant cardiologist, now saw him as someone who'd violated the trust and ethics of his profession. And Jasmine? Jasmine discovered that being a mistress was much more romantic when it was a secret than when it was public knowledge. I found out through Simone, who had a friend who worked at the hospital, that Jasmine had been fired from her nursing position. Ethical violations, conducting a relationship with a superior, the same things that had gotten Marcus in trouble. Marcus had moved her out of the hotel and into a rental house in West Ashley, one of Charleston's less affluent neighborhoods. Nothing like the estate where she'd been living under Eleanor's protection. Nothing like the life she'd imagined having with Marcus. For weeks after the funeral, I was in Jonathan's office discussing the settlement proposal Marcus's attorney had finally sent over when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello, Mrs. Ashford? This is Jasmine Collier. I froze. How did you get this number? Marcus gave it to me. Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you. I should have hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. You have 2 minutes. I'm sorry. Her voice was shaking. I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't understand what I was doing. Marcus told me you two were basically separated, that the marriage was over in everything but paperwork, that you were staying together for appearances, but you both had other relationships. And you believed him? I was 23 when we met. He was this sophisticated older doctor.
He paid attention to me.
He made me feel special. By the time I realized he'd been lying about everything, I was already pregnant, and Eleanor had moved me into her house, and I felt trapped. You felt trapped? Jasmine, you were living in a mansion. Marcus was paying for everything. You were having his child. That doesn't sound like trapped to me. You're right. I wasn't trapped. I was complicit. I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I did it anyway because I wanted the life Marcus promised me. The nice house, the security, being Mrs. Ashford. I wanted what you had. Well, now you can have it. You can have Marcus, and the debt he's accumulating from legal fees, and the damaged reputation, and the career that's falling apart. Congratulations. I don't want it anymore.
She was crying now.
I don't want any of it. I'm 7 months pregnant with a child whose father is never around because he's too busy trying to salvage his career and fight you in court. I'm living in a rental house in a neighborhood where I don't know anyone. All of Marcus's friends hate me. His family won't speak to me. Eleanor's dead, and she was the only one who ever treated me like I mattered. Jasmine, why are you calling me? Because I need you to know the truth about something. Something Eleanor told me before she died. Something Marcus doesn't know I know. What is it? The reason Marcus married you in the first place. It wasn't love. It was money. I went very still. Explain. Eleanor told me that when you and Marcus met, he was drowning in debt for medical school. Over $400,000. He'd made some bad investments, gambled more than he should have, and he was about to lose everything. Eleanor told him he needed to marry someone stable, someone with good earning potential, someone who could help dig him out of the hole he'd created. You're lying. I'm not. Eleanor showed me documents. Loan papers, gambling debts, credit card statements. She said you were the perfect solution. You had a good job, no debt, and you were naive enough to believe in love. She said Marcus played the part of the charming doctor perfectly, and you fell for it completely. My hands were shaking. Why would Eleanor tell you this? Because she wanted me to understand that Marcus doesn't actually love anyone.
He uses people.
He used you to get out of debt. He used me for, I don't know, excitement maybe, validation, whatever was missing in his life. Eleanor said her son was damaged, that his father had been cruel to him growing up, that Marcus never learned how to actually love people, only how to use them. And yet she still helped him. She said it was her fault. That she'd raised him to value reputation over character, appearances over reality. She said she'd created the monster, and she was trying to contain the damage. I closed my eyes. Even from beyond the grave, Eleanor was still revealing new layers of betrayal. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve to know. And because I'm leaving. I'm moving back to Ohio, where my family is. I can't raise my son here, surrounded by people who hate me, with a father who sees him as an obligation rather than a blessing. I wanted you to know the whole truth before I go. I wanted you to understand that we were both Marcus's victims in different ways. We're not the same, Jasmine. I was his wife. You were his mistress. Those aren't equivalent. You're right. They're not. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry, and I hope your son has a better father than mine will. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in Jonathan's office, processing what she'd told me. Marcus had married me for money. Our entire relationship had been a transaction. Even from the very beginning, I'd been nothing more than a solution to his problems. Mallory? Jonathan was looking at me with concern. What did she say? I told him. All of it. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled. That's quite a revelation. Do you think it's true? Eleanor gave Jasmine documents. If those documents exist, we need them. I'll reach out to Jasmine's attorney. If she's willing to provide testimony about Marcus's financial situation before your marriage, it could significantly impact the settlement.
It did.
Jasmine, in her final act of either redemption or revenge, provided copies of everything Eleanor had shown her. Marcus's gambling debts, his student loans, his credit card statements from before our marriage. Evidence that he'd been nearly bankrupt when we met. Jonathan used this to argue that the house Eleanor had given us, the investments Marcus had made during our marriage, the entire financial life we'd built, had been funded primarily by my income and my financial stability. Marcus had contributed, yes, but he'd started from a position of massive debt that my money had helped him overcome. Judge Whitmore was not sympathetic to Marcus's position. The settlement, when it was finally reached 6 months after the funeral, was devastating for him. I got the house on Trad Street, free and clear. I got 60% of all marital assets. I got substantial child support. And most importantly, I got primary custody of our son, with Marcus receiving supervised visitation until he could demonstrate stability in his life and career. Marcus tried to appeal. His attorney argued the settlement was punitive, that I was being rewarded for my vindictive behavior at the funeral. Judge Whitmore shut that down quickly. Mr. Ashford, she said, you conducted a 5-year affair. You fathered a child with another woman. You attempted to hide assets from your wife. You enlisted your dying mother's help in maintaining an elaborate deception. The settlement Mrs. Ashford has received is not punitive. It's simply fair. Appeal denied. My son was born on September 23rd, 6 weeks after Jasmine gave birth to Marcus's other son in Ohio. I named him Theodore James Bennett, not Ashford. Bennett, my maiden name. I legally changed both our names back to Bennett as part of the divorce settlement. Theodore was perfect. 7 pounds, 9 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and eyes that I swore looked wise beyond their days. When the nurse placed him in my arms for the first time, I looked down at his tiny face and made him a promise. I will never lie to you, I whispered. I will never manipulate you. I will never use you. I will love you honestly, completely, with my whole heart. You will know what real love looks like, not the twisted version your father and grandmother showed me. He gripped my finger with his tiny hand, and I felt something inside me heal. Simone was there with me through the delivery. She'd been my rock through everything, the one person who'd stood by me without judgment or agenda. You did it, she said, tears streaming down her face as she looked at Theodore. You survived all of it, and you brought this beautiful boy into the world. We survived it, I corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Marcus came to the hospital the day after Theodore was born. He stood at the door of my room, looking uncertain. Can I come in? I should have said no. But he was Theodore's father, regardless of everything else. 5 minutes. He approached the bed slowly, looking down at our son with an expression I'd never seen before. Something between awe and grief. He's beautiful, Mal. His name is Theodore. Theodore, Marcus repeated. That's a good name. Strong. You can hold him if you want. Marcus's hands shook as he took Theodore from me. He held our son carefully, like Theodore was made of glass. I'm sorry, Marcus said quietly, not looking at me. For everything. For all of it. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. Yes, I did. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve the chance to ask for it. But I want you to know that I will spend the rest of my life trying to be a better father to Theodore than I was a husband to you. See that you do. Because he's watching, Marcus. Every choice you make from now on, he'll be watching. And someday he'll be old enough to understand what you did to his mother. What you threw away. What you destroyed. Marcus nodded, tears rolling down his face. I know. He stayed for the full 5 minutes, holding Theodore, memorizing his face. When the time was up, he handed our son back to me. Can I come back tomorrow? To visit. The custody arrangement allows supervised visitation. The hospital can provide a supervisor if you want to visit again while we're here.
Right.
Of course. The arrangement. He looked broken standing there, and some small part of me, the part that had once loved him, felt a flicker of pity. But it was just a flicker. Nothing more. 1 year after Eleanor's funeral, I stood in the garden of my house on Trad Street, watching Theodore take his first wobbly steps across the grass. My house. Not Marcus's. Not the Ashfords.
Mine.
I'd repainted the interior in colors I loved. I'd filled it with furniture I chose. I'd turned Marcus's office into a playroom for Theodore. I'd planted flowers in the courtyard garden, flowers Eleanor would have hated, bright and wild and completely unsuitable for a historic Charleston garden. I loved them. My consulting business was thriving. I'd gained a reputation as someone who was fearless, who told the truth regardless of consequences. Companies wanted that energy, that honesty. My client roster had tripled in the past year. Simone came over every Sunday for brunch. We'd sit in the courtyard, drinking coffee, watching Theodore play, talking about everything and nothing. Have you heard from Marcus lately? She asked one Sunday. He sends child support on time every month. He has his supervised visits every Saturday afternoon. He's polite, distant. We coexist for Theodore's sake, but that's all. And Jasmine? She sends a card every year on Theodore's birthday. She wants the boys to know each other someday, when they're older. I'm not opposed to it. What happened wasn't their fault. That's generous of you. It's not generosity. It's just reality. Those boys are half-brothers. They share DNA, whether I like it or not. Someday they'll want to meet each other. When that day comes, I won't stand in the way. I'd heard through the Charleston grapevine that Marcus had eventually been allowed to return to work at Roper Hospital, but he'd been demoted, moved to a less prestigious position. His social standing never fully recovered. He was no longer invited to the society events he'd once dominated. Some people pitied him. Some people said he got what he deserved. I didn't care either way. He was just the man who fathered my son. Nothing more, nothing less. As for Eleanor's legacy, the funeral speech had done exactly what I'd intended. People remembered her now not as a pillar of Charleston society, but as the woman who'd helped her son conduct an elaborate betrayal. Her name, once revered, was now whispered about in scandalized tones. The Ashford estate was sold 8 months after her death. Marcus couldn't afford to maintain it alone, and none of Eleanor's relatives wanted it. A tech entrepreneur from California bought it and turned it into a boutique hotel. Eleanor would have hated that. I found that thought deeply satisfying. Theodore stumbled and fell on the grass. For a moment, I thought he'd cry, but instead he laughed, that pure, joyful baby laugh that made everything worthwhile. I scooped him up, kissing his chubby cheeks. That's it, buddy. You fall down, you get back up. You keep trying. He giggled and squirmed to be put down again, ready for another attempt at walking. As I watched my son take another brave, wobbling step, I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago. The woman who'd sat in Eleanor's sunroom drinking tea, believing the lies, trusting the people who were betraying her. I thought about the woman I'd become. Stronger, harder in some ways, but also more honest. More real. I'd stopped performing the role of the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, the perfect Charleston society woman. I'd started being just Mallory. Flawed, fierce, and free. The doorbell rang. I picked up Theodore and went to answer it. It was a young woman, maybe 25, wearing jeans and holding a folder. Mrs. Bennett? Mallory Bennett. Yes. My name is Rachel Price. I'm a journalist with Charleston Magazine. I'm working on a piece about women who've rebuilt their lives after betrayal. I was hoping I might interview you. I looked at her for a long moment. A year ago, I would have said yes immediately. I would have seen it as validation, as proof that my story mattered.
But now?
I appreciate the interest, but I'm not interested in being interviewed about my divorce. That chapter of my life is closed. I understand. But Mrs. Bennett, your story has inspired so many women. Women who felt trapped in marriages, who were being manipulated, who didn't think they could fight back. You showed them they could. Don't you want to help other women who might be going through what you went through? I looked down at Theodore in my arms, then back at this eager young journalist. You want to know how to help women who are being betrayed? I said, tell them this. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Keep your own money, your own credit, your own identity. Don't lose yourself in someone else's life. And most importantly, understand that loyalty to the truth is more important than loyalty to people who are lying to you. That's powerful. Can I quote you? You can quote this. I spent 7 years living in a marriage built on lies. I spent 3 years being deceived by the people I trusted most. And when I finally learned the truth, I had a choice. I could stay silent to protect their reputations, or I could speak up to protect myself and my son.
It chose truth over comfort. It chose honesty over appearances.
I chose myself. Rachel was writing furiously in her notebook. And, do you regret the way you revealed the truth? At your mother-in-law's funeral? I thought about that question. Did I regret it? No, I said firmly. Eleanor spent her last 3 years orchestrating my betrayal. She died having given me the truth and the tools to fight back. That funeral was her final gift to me, whether she intended it or not. It was the moment I stopped being a victim and became a survivor. What would you say to your ex-husband if he was listening right now? Nothing. I've said everything I need to say to Marcus. We coexist for our son's sake, but beyond that, he's irrelevant to my life. And that's exactly where I want him. And to other women in similar situations, I looked down at Theodore again, this beautiful boy who represented everything I'd fought for. I'd tell them that sometimes the people we love most are capable of hurting us most deeply. That trust without honesty is just another form of control. That forgiveness doesn't mean accepting betrayal. And that protecting yourself and your children isn't selfish, it's survival. I paused, then added one more thing. I'd tell them that there's life after betrayal. Real life, good life, better life than the one built on lies.
It won't be easy.
It will be painful and scary, and you'll question yourself 1,000 times. But on the other side of that pain is freedom. Real freedom. The freedom to be exactly who you are, without apology, without pretense, without living up to anyone else's expectations. Rachel finished writing and looked up at me with something like admiration. Thank you, Mrs. Bennet. That was beautiful. You're welcome. Now, if you'll excuse me, my son and I have a park to visit. I closed the door and carried Theodore back to the courtyard. As we stepped outside into the warm Charleston sunshine, I felt it again. That sensation of lightness, of freedom,
Of peace.
I'd survived the worst thing I could imagine, and I'd come out the other side stronger. I'd learned that the truth, no matter how painful, was better than the most comfortable lie. I'd learned that I was capable of fighting for myself and my son, even when it meant burning down everything I'd built. And most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the only way to honor yourself is to stop honoring people who don't deserve it. Eleanor had taught me that lesson in the cruelest way possible, but it was the most valuable lesson I'd ever learned. As Theodore laughed and played in our garden in our home, in our life built on truth instead of lies, I smiled. The war was over, and I had won. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. This story shows us that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tell the truth, even when the truth is difficult, even when it costs us something. Real strength isn't staying silent to keep the peace. Real strength is speaking up to protect yourself and those you love. If you like this story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.